Welcome to the Dynasty Deep Dive. I am joined by a very special guest today, Rich from FF Sanctuary. You can find him on Twitter at Dynasty Island. He is just a killer in the Dynasty streets, but just a very knowledgeable fantasy football guy. Honored to have you, man. Today, we're going to talk about your rookie models and rookies that people need to draft in order to win their fantasy leagues in 2025 and going forward. So let's kick it right off. Which rookie are you most excited about coming from the results of your model, and give us a little bit as to why?
Yeah, I think, I definitely have a type when it comes to wide receivers. From a film perspective, I love undersized, good route runners that can create separation at all three levels of the field. From a data perspective, it's age-adjusted production, and Jalen Royals is the guy. I think he ticks a lot of boxes from a numbers perspective. I think he's being undervalued currently in Dynasty kind of ADP and that sort of stuff. And I think that this is a guy who I'd be quite happy taking early to mid-second rounds in rookie drafts, providing he gets that kind of day two draft capital. And I think potentially you're going to be able to get him maybe even a full round later than that when you get to rookie drafts in May.
Yeah, because I agree. I love the player, but it's a deep class, right? I think people have kind of knocked on the wide receivers, but just between the luxury of tight ends, running backs, I think NFL offenses are looking at those position players more as just weapons now, right? And there's a lot of weapons in this draft. So I could see him going in the third round, maybe, maybe a little later even, maybe higher. We really don't know, but this is why we do the analysis. And I love what Ray Garvin said on one of the Dynasty Life podcasts. He said, we got to do this homework before. And ultimately, draft capital is going to be a huge influence, but it's not the end all be all. Because if you were doing your homework a few years ago and you knew that Jonathan Taylor was a much better prospect than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you didn't jump the shark because Clyde Edwards-Helaire got that first round draft capital, you're a lot happier a few years later, right? Based on the work you did on the front end. So Jalen Royals, phenomenal player. I'm going to pull up his player profiler page. I don't love the best comparable player, Michael Gallup. I mean, we could talk to her blue in the face about what Michael Gallup could have been, right? If injuries wouldn't have derailed his career. But what sticks out to me personally when I watch his film and when I have evaluated him is just the speed. This guy is a burner in the open field and just one of those guys who can catch the ball, make one man miss, and take it to the house. And that 4.42 is saying something. I was at the combine and I asked him, are you 100%? Because I've heard some rumors that you're not fully recovered. It's I'm not fully recovered, but I am going to run and I'm going to do the wide receiver drills. And to me, that just speaks volumes to the type of player and the type of character this guy has to not only participate, but then go and run a 4.42 89th percentile 40. So is that something else that stuck out to you as well, Rich? Is that kind of make that home run threat that he provides to an offense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever you're looking at a guy that's from a smaller school, you're looking at translatable skills. And, raw athleticism is absolutely one of those. Is he just a good athlete amongst guys who's going to be insurance salesman and, used car salesman in a couple of years? Or is he an NFL athlete? And, on the tape, he flashes, you put him in the combine and it's oh no, this guy is a legit NFL athlete. You see the 40 score, you see the speed score. It's okay, yeah, he ticks that box. I don't know what box he's not ticking. It's he ticks the analytics box, he ticks the film box, the route running box, he ticks the athleticism box. I'm really excited about the prospect. And I think that this is the kind of player that gets forgotten about in rookie drafts because we're chasing, those Calvin Johnson type 6'5" freak shows, or the guys who played at, you know, Alabama and Texas and those kind of blue blood schools. It's like, actually, Jalen Royals, he'll get forgotten about, but in 2 years' time, he's probably going to be a solid wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for your dynasty team, putting up, you know, 12, 13 fantasy points a game, and you're very, very happy.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point about the analytics boxes, like 97th percentile college target share we have him at, 80th percentile dominator rating. Like, that's really, really solid stuff. When you pair that with the speed, the production is phenomenal. You know, again, derailed by injury in 2024, only played 9 games, but over 1,000 yards in his junior year. This is a guy who I'm really glad you brought up, 15 touchdowns his junior year as well. The one knock that I've heard on him, and I'd like to get your thoughts on before we move on from him, and I did ask him about this. I said, hey, like, there's a bit of a knock about the Mickey Mouse routes, like a lot of screens, a lot of slants on his tape, which, like, personally, I don't mind, because if you can, AJ Brown crushes slants all day, right? And you're getting your, you know, screens, you're getting the ball in the hand of your best player. Like, these are great things, especially if they continue at the next level. But do you have any concerns about, it sounded like you like what you've seen from his route running, and he certainly deflected that question when I asked it. He's like, I will be fine at the next level running a more complex route tree. A lot of it was just based on the defenses we were playing. But any hesitations for you there for this guy, or are you like pretty all in?
Yeah, no, not at all. I think if it's a question mark of a guy that I'm not sure about his route running ability, but he gets all the, as you said, Mickey Mouse touches, I'm like, okay, maybe there's some concern there, but he can run the full route tree. We saw him be able to, you know, very smooth in and out his break, understands how to set up a defender. He can stack and stem defenders with the best of them. And it's like, yeah, he ticks that box for me very, very comfortably. So,
Okay.
yeah, I put it down as, look, a small school's got an NFL player. There's probably not any other NFL players on their offense. They just want to get the ball in his hands. That's the reason why he's running those screens and getting all those touches. So yeah, I'm not concerned about that at all.
Yeah, it almost, the answer kind of tongue in cheek sounded like we were up against some D lines, and I kind of heard like, and our O line like wasn't going to give our QB a lot of time to throw, so they had to get it to me quick, right? And so, last question for you on Jalen Royals. Again, don't love the Michael Gallup comp. Do you have a comp for him that you're? I'm putting you on the spot here, so it's okay.
Yeah, I try to avoid comps, if I'm being brutally honest, because I think that we go down rabbit holes and yeah, you sort of say a player and people latch on to perhaps not what you're thinking of. I think if I was to say his usage and his potential, I think of someone like Elijah Moore, rookie year with the Jets, in terms of, I think, undervalued, came in, had that sort of slot slash flanker usage, quite high target volume, not massive ADOT, but solid, and just a really valuable option. Obviously, his career didn't kind of kick on from there, had spits and starts with the Jets and then the Browns, but I think
Yeah.
that is the role I see him filling and his potential as a rookie, certainly.
Dude, rookie year, Elijah Moore, like weeks like 12 through 16 or whatever it was, like, man, that was a
Exactly.
fun time. Where's Royals for you on your like wide receiver rankings? Is he top 6, top 5?
So he's 8 for me
Okay.
currently.
Okay.
Yeah, in a tier with, so I've kind of got 4 at the top, and then he's in a tier from 4 through 9. So
Okay.
it's yeah, it's very congested in that sort of third tier of wide receiver.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to ask that because it's still, I think that's, you're high on him, but you're not like crazy. You know what I mean? Wide receiver 8's, I think, about where I have him. Maybe I think almost exactly. So, well, cool. Thanks for giving us a guy that you're really excited about. He's a fun player to watch, and I hope he can stay healthy and just run at full speed next season. I think that's what I'm most excited to see, is him with the ball in his hands. Okay, so next we're going to get into some of the work you've done, which is why I brought you on this show, around your rookie models. And I was telling you before the show started, like just a high level of respect for me when you combined, you don't just like watch the film for 2 minutes and then kind of decide, all right, that's my guy, I'm moving on. You take time to develop some analytics and some weightings and criteria to ultimately determine who your guys are. And so I think there's a lot to be gleaned from fantasy managers about how you go in creating those models, what's important to you, what you're looking for. So, let's start. I guess this might be a question that's kind of depends on the position a bit. I would imagine the criteria changes a little bit, but can you just talk about some of the factors that are most important in your model, whether it be college production, athletic testing, what kind of carries the most weight to you in predicting rookie success outside of like pre-draft when we don't have the capital?
Yeah, of course. So, it is very much position dependent. I've got 3 models: one for running back, one for wide receiver, one for tight end. I've tried and tried and tried to model quarterback, but it's just seems to be completely unmodelable. Nothing seems to correlate. I can't seem to do anything there, so I've just kind of given up trying now, to be honest. The largest thing in each of the models is age adjusted production across the positions, looking at a couple of different metrics depending on position, but that's basically the main bulk of it, is the age adjusted production. There's then a draft capital weighting in there. Now that takes both a percentile rank on the draft round, but also the actual draft pick. And then there's a very small weighting for my film grade. It almost works as like a tiebreaker for the final ranking as such. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't put any athletic testing in the wide receiver model at all. I did previously have it in the running back model, but removed that in this year's kind of tweak. So I'm constantly testing, constantly tweaking and improving the models over the past 5 years since I created them. I used to have weight adjusted speed score for running backs, but I've now removed that. And then in tight end, I do have quite a big weighting on that athletic profile.
On athleticism. Okay. That makes really good sense.
Weight adjusted speed score and RAS score are both weighted in there.
Yeah, because there's been some stuff I've seen like about athleticism being a negative corollary for wide receivers, right? So why put too much emphasis on that in your model, right? Where tight end, there is a ton of evidence that shows athleticism is like one of the best predictors for what kind of draft capital they're going to get, how productive they're going to be. So, and just to close the loop here, when you say age adjusted production, just for like the amateur viewers, that basically means a guy who scores 1,000 or gets 1,000 receiving yards at 18 is more impressive to you than a guy who does it at 21.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways of measuring things. Receiving, for example, is largely weighted by receiving yards per team pass attempt.
Cool.
But I created my own points per game weighting and thresholds. So a bit like a breakout age almost takes dominator for an age. I have that, but regarding fantasy production. So yeah, if you hit that threshold at 18, obviously that's better than hitting it at 24 when you're potentially 6 years older than the corners that you're going up against.
Yeah. And that reminds me, your model liked Xavier Worthy, right? For that exact reason. And he's doing just fine, isn't he? So really came on at the end of the year, and I know it was a blowout loss, but in the Super Bowl, it was like, this is what I wanted to see all season from him, right? So very cool, man. Thank you for letting us kind of get beyond the surface. That's what we're all about with the Dynasty Deep Dive, is just getting beyond the fluffy stuff and figuring out what really the best of the best in terms of the fantasy community is doing to pick their bets, right? So without further ado, let's pull up one of your models. Let's start with running backs. I am going to pull up and just a disclaimer, this is just a pull from Rich's Twitter. So it's not like up to the minute accurate. But he agreed that this is good enough to share and talk through. So here's where we're at. And draft capital here is assumed, right? It's not, we don't know yet. But I think 7 is I have a question. Are you basically taking this draft capital? Like, is there some sort of like, are you going off of what Vegas is saying their draft capital prediction is, or are you just kind of winging it?
No, so in the pre-draft process, I do a bi-weekly update from Mock Draft Database.
Yep.
So this is, I'm trying to think when you pulled this. This is probably 3-4 weeks ago, where the kind of the projected consensus big board had each of the running backs in at that time, I guess.
Yeah. So what I like about this too is it just shows the strength of this class, right? It doesn't include the Gibbs and Bijan class. I know they're, I believe, both in your 90th percentile. But you got to look pretty far down to find Blake Corum and Jonathan Brooks, right? So what a stacked running back class. I mean, do you think like this has got to be a top 5 running back class that you and I have seen in our lifetime?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think back to 2017 is probably the only thing that can compare. I mean, 2017, I had 2 guys that were above 95th percentile, one other in the 90, and then 3 guys in the kind of the 80th percentile. So that was probably a better class, but that's about it. I mean, nobody else really gets into the realm of this class in terms of top end talent, but also the depth. It's rare that you see 4 or 5 guys that are in that kind of 80th percentile plus bucket.
Yeah, and I love that because the other time the 2017 class got brought up was on my first episode with Kent Lee Platty, the inventor of the RAS relative athletic score. And so he's taking a view that you're not as much weighing as he's looking at it pure athleticism, and he's saying this is the most athletic class we've seen since then. And now you're saying model analytics, all that stuff is also telling me. So it's like you've got the athletic guys like Kent telling you that this is a generational class, and now you've got the analytical guys like Rich who are kind of also affirming that. So that is exciting. I'll ask you a question here, kind of off the cuff. Jalen Royals, where is he slotting in for you after like Caleb Johnson and before Dylan Sampson? Or how do you kind of blend those models together to ultimately decide what you're going? Is it just purely based off percentiles? You kind of throw them all in one and say, okay, Ashton's at 99, and then let's say Hunter is somewhere in the mid 90s and he's second to me. Like, do you just kind of aggregate it all, or any marrying of the different positions to create an overall rankings?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an inexact science when it comes to merging them all. So I will create my positional rankings largely based off the model. There may be a slight tweak within a tier if there's a guy that I prefer. That's, as I said earlier, I use my kind of film grade as that sort of tiebreaker. But when it's merging it all together, it's taking into account my ranking, my kind of percentile ranking, but also ADP, because I'll look at it and say, at the moment, I've got Jalen Royals 1 spot behind Dylan Sampson. But if Jalen Royals is going a full round before Dylan Sampson, I'd probably flip those 2 just because of basically a return on investment, the cost perspective. There's no reason for me to draft Sampson over Royals if Royals is going a full round beforehand. So yeah, when I come to create my top 50 for Superflex, 1QB, whatever, it's taking into account my positional rankings, but also looking at ADP as a way of building my overall ranks, because I think it's really important you don't just draft off a 1 to 20 list, because actually taking into account that whole ADP and the cost is a big
Yeah.
part of drafting.
And when you're saying ADP, you mean like dynasty, like if everybody has Warren at pick 8, Tyler Warren, then you're not going to draft it, or you're not going to draft Colston. So I know where you're going with this, and I totally agree. And I'm going full screen because I gotta speak my truth for a second here. I had posted a tweet that Colston Loveland was my 4th ranked prospect, just like based on like, I don't have as baked out of a model as you do, but I kind of ad hoc kind of look at the film, look at the production. And to your point, I think something that I'm sure bumped Loveland up to your models, and we'll get to that, is like yards per team pass attempt. He looks a lot sexier when you even out that they don't throw the ball that much in Michigan, and that he's a big part of their offense as opposed to Tyler Warren, right? And so I said something like, yeah, he's my 4th ranked prospect. And somebody's like, oh, you're drafting him 4th overall? Like, what a sucker. And I'm like, that is not what the hell I said at all. Like, I said he's my 4th ranked. Now I can adjust accordingly. Like, I'll go get him at pick 13 where his ADP is or whatever. Luckily, my teams are good enough where I'm not drafting in the top 4, so I don't have to be put to that position. But if I was, I would look to move down if I really wanted to get him. I'd probably just stick with the pick at pick 4 because I think you'd get a pretty solid player regardless. And who knows, one of my top 3 guys could fall into that 4th pick. So I just say all that because that is a little. If you can't tell, I had a little bickering match on X with someone about like calling me crazy because I had him that high. And I'm like, it doesn't mean I'm about to go draft him 4th overall. It means like I'm going to use that information to adjust based on ADP, right? And that's what you're getting at as well.
Absolutely. And this is where like I hate rankings because I think that, okay, we've all got to pay the piper. Like everybody loves rankings and stuff like that. But to me, like I will never draft from a list of rankings because it's completely irrelevant. You need to know the room you're in, the market conditions, the cost before you're picking a player. If you're I may love a player, but if I can get him in the 3rd round rather than the 2nd, I'd be stupid to take him in the 2nd because you're just throwing value away. And at the end of the day, in this dynasty game, we're all trying to scoop up and add value constantly. If you're just going to start throwing it away by overdrafting guys versus ADP and things like that, you're just costing yourself.
Beautiful. Love it, man. Thanks for letting me kind of, like I said, speak my truth a little bit there. So let's pull this back up for a second, because I think the thing that glares probably to everybody, and everybody's talking about this guy, so we won't spend too long, but 99th percentile model for Ashton Jeanty. I mean, that's high, right? And so my question for you was, how special is that score? And do you have any insight on like how bust proof rookies are when they score that high in your model?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of break this down in my rookie guide. I basically go by buckets. So a player who is in the 95th percentile plus historically in my model at the running back position averages 21.4 points per game in their first 3 years, which is pretty special.
Yeah, it's not bad.
to give you an idea, the guys that are above that mark since 2015. So Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, Bijan Robinson, and Ashton Jeanty would be the 5th player. So yeah, it's a pretty special group once you're above that kind of 95th, 96th percentile. And the track record is pretty awesome.
I was going to say that's about as bust proof as you can get based on those listed names, right? So I didn't have this on the show sheet, but I'll ask you. I mean, it's completely reasonable to trade up for this guy then in that circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to say that. I'm a guy that doesn't love investing in the running back position. So for me to have a running back as my kind of 101 is quite a big deal.
Gives you heart palpitations.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, I take him first overall in a heartbeat. I probably am not going to be able to pay up and trade up for the capital that most people would like to in a league. I mean, he's going to be a top 3 dynasty running back for me immediately. So I would comfortably pay, say, 2 random future firsts for him.
Okay.
But I know, it's very league dependent, because I think every league is its own little microeconomy. But there are some people that will value, Jamar Gibbs or Bijan Robinson are like 3 firsts plus. I just can't get there with that sort of valuation on a running back, given the shelf life and the potential fall off one injury can have. So,
Yeah.
I love the player. I'm happy trading up to him if you can, at a reasonable cost. But yeah, I'm not paying like huge amounts just because I don't value the running back position that insanely in Dynasty.
If he was a 99 percentile wide receiver, now you're talking,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly that, yeah.
Well, cool. Rich, this is great. We're going to get back into that same model in just a second. First, I want to take like just a quick break, and I want to, where can people like talk to them about the work you do, where they can find you? I already mentioned your Twitter, but plug it again, and where they can support you and get more hands on the work you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'm at Dynasty Island on Twitter, on X. But yeah, you can find all of my work. It's the Fantasy Sanctuary, so the FF Sanctuary, on Twitter, on YouTube. We're pumping out as many shows as we can right now.
Yes.
But we release a rookie guide, so we'll be a written up film analysis of every single fantasy relevant player from this year's draft class, plus all of my rookie model, the historic rookie model, and everything you could ever want and more. That's available to all members on YouTube, silver tier and above. Go and check it out, because a lot of work goes into it. It's definitely a labor of love, but I thoroughly enjoy putting it together.
Yes, I got my hands on that guide from the previous year, and like I will attest, like the amount of detail and just analysis that's in it, it really made me have a newfound respect for you, and kind of opened my eyes into just the grind that this is. We do it because we love it, right? But respect to you, man. We're gonna roll a quick promo, and we're gonna get right back to the show.
Rookie. It's all about rookie talk in fantasy football right now. So why not go use all that knowledge to do something other than a mock draft? Chris Gimino won $8,000 with just 2 teams last year, and each draft took 5 minutes. That's pretty good ROI. You can start doing rookie drafts for money today on Fast Draft. The Origins tournament is live. It is the place to go and monetize your knowledge of rookies, and use your favorite Player Profiler host promo code for a $25 deposit match. Now let's go start drafting faster.
Yes, you can use at Fantasy Picasso, or I don't think you need the @ sign, just Fantasy Picasso, for a deposit match on your first deposit on Fast Draft. I rip a couple of those every day. I'm almost maxed my entries. We're doing a pre-draft rookies only best ball tournament, and then they're going to do a post-draft one as well. Rich, I bet you would just die to have that over there in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. We've I've done a couple of like mocks and the free versions, but yeah, unfortunately we can't enter any of the monetized stuff over here. So yeah, I'm desperate for it to come over. We lost DraftKings this year, so we need something to be able to draft on. I'm feeling very, very much like I'm missing out.
Yeah, well, let's get back into it. The question, we're still on the running back model here, and I think the guy who's next in the 90s, which is again a great percentile rank, like Rich isn't just giving out 90s, as you can see by some of these post draft percentiles. Omarion Hampton, and you have him based on, like you said, mock draft database going in the first. Just out of curiosity, let's say he slips to like middle second. Let's just say middle second. What would that do in terms of dinging him down in this?
Yeah, of course. So if he was just to throw out, the 50th pick, so a mid-second round pick, that would knock him down to around sort of 87th, 88th percentile. So still very good score. Still would be my RB2. But yeah, just outside that kind of the 90th percentile. and for me, it is quite a drop in terms of expected production. So a guy in kind of 90 percentile plus is averaging 19.5 points per game first 3 years. The 80th to 90th percentile, we're talking 12.8 points per game. So you can see the expected drop in the production is quite significant once you get outside that kind of top 10%.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I asked. So at the end of the day, draft capital, as we all know, is king, right? And just kind of running through the rest of the list, Judkins, obviously everybody expects him to be up there based on just, early declare, productive all 3 years. Cameron Scatabo, pretty high on him on this model. Caleb Johnson, not a bad score. I want to cue in on a guy we talked a little bit before the show started, who you have just below Jonathan Brooks, even though he's got expected 4th round draft capital at pick 120, and that is Devin Neal. Like I'm high on this guy. My comp is a little bit like Bucky Irving, just in terms of some of that make you miss, some of that ability to just be the guy. I think he can really surprise some people. I honestly think he might go before that 4th round. We'll see, but it seems like you're pretty high on him based on these rankings too. Can you just talk to me a bit about what went into your analysis of Devin Neal and what bumps him above guys like Tootin and Gordon, even though he's got lower predicted draft capital in this model?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is essentially the pre-draft kind of, I guess, data around the age-adjusted production. So if you're looking just purely from a numbers perspective, of all the kind of main draftable guys, he's 3rd highest in the pre-draft data. So that would be behind Jeanty and Scatabo. So just looking at things like per route run numbers from a receiving perspective, he pops in that, some really good stuff. Yards per team attempts, crosses thresholds there. And also my age adjusted production breakout percentile, again, really good there. So it's just, he's ticking the numbers from a kind of an analytics perspective in that pre-draft. Just to give you an idea, if he were to go, let's say kind of 85th pick in the 3rd round, so where we've got Dylan Sampson projected currently, that would put him 77th percentile. So he'd jump ahead of Caleb Johnson for me, if he did get that 3rd round draft capital. So yeah, I really like the guy from a film grade perspective. He ticks some boxes. I think he's explosive. I think he's potential to be a kind of a 3-down back. I don't think he's going to be a workhorse, but I think we could see him in a 60% opportunity workload if he gets the right opportunity. So yeah, he's definitely someone that I'm praying crosses that threshold and gets into the day 2 of the draft. Yeah. And if he gets a good landing spot, it could be wheels up for him for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, when I asked him at the combine, had he met the Broncos, he said yes for a formal meeting. And so I'm a Broncos fan. I think that would be an awesome landing spot for a guy like him. And I love that you touched on his passing, his game, how he's a weapon in the receiving game. I think a lot of people kind of brush that off about him, but he's just a guy who, when he's got the ball in his hands, he can make a play. So, love this, Rich. Really great work. We are going to keep it moving. We're going to get on to the wide receiver portion of your model now, if you don't have any objections.
No, absolutely.
So love that Travis Hunter is right there. This is great. This is like music to my ears. But I want to start with Tet. Will Tet be a wide receiver 1, like a top 12 fantasy points per game receiver at the next level, just based on your initial analysis?
I think I've got to take the field here. I think the options of being a top 12 receiver are pretty low. I think if you were saying, top 24, I'd probably take it. But I just think he's going to be a solid, reliable top 24, top 36 option year in, year out. But saying top 12 is just a bit too rich for me.
Okay. I love the blunt honesty. Kind of makes sense when you've got him below a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., because even he proved that nobody's invincible, right? Like, and he didn't cross that threshold yet. And I think a lot of people are skeptic that he'll do it in 2025 as long as Kyler Murray's throwing him the ball. So let's spend a minute on Travis Hunter, though. Like, this guy, I would imagine the model would love him even more if he played full-time wide receiver, right? Just an incredibly talented player. When you did some of your analysis and looking at the back end of the data that you put in, is there anything specific that pushed him over Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah, I think first of all, what I'd love to say is that if you could guarantee me that Travis Hunter is 100% wide receiver at the next level, I think he'd be my 101 over Ashton Jeanty. Like,
let's go.
I think there's everything there. He ticks every box. This is a guy that wasn't sitting in offensive meeting rooms last year. He was getting routes called into him from the sideline because he didn't know the plays. Like, it's absolutely wild. Imagine what happens when he gets there. But yeah, in terms of numbers, so yeah, good receiving yards per team pass attempt, 95th percentile touchdown per game mark, 94th percentile targeted QB rating, good adjusted, age adjusted. My PPR breakout, he was 92nd percentile. So like he ticks a lot of the boxes. Film grade, he's my second highest graded wide receiver of the last 4 years. Yeah, I just think he's an absolute phenomenal player, and I'm just praying that he goes to the Patriots and we get to see him as a wide receiver rather than a cornerback that, you know, dabbles at wide receiver, shall we say.
Dude, he's such a dog. Like, he was so adamant at the combine that he wants to play both sides 100%. And, you know, ultimately that's going to be the coach's decisions, right? But man, you and I both, I think, and the fantasy community at large, like I actually tweeted that. I said, if he's a wide receiver full-time, he's my 101. Like, just because love Ashton Jeanty, no knock on him. But when you talk about guys that have the potential to wear a gold jacket, like, I think he's just generational in that aspect, and I wouldn't want to bet against it, you know? So, and to your point, like, it's a lot more fun to have a wide receiver where you're spending that premium draft capital as opposed to a running back. So really cool. Thanks for diving in on Travis Hunter. I think landing spot will matter a lot there. Is there any scenario where that does happen, where he gets top 3 draft capital? Let's say he goes to the Browns at 2, probably unlikely, but let's say it happens, and they announce immediately after he's a wide receiver now. We may use him a little bit on defense, but he's going to be in the offensive meeting rooms. We're going to try and have him out there for 90+% of the offensive snaps. What goes into your head there in terms of, like, are you actually adjusting the model to put him number 1, or how's that work for you?
Yes, I think the model doesn't take into account that he's a cornerback. So like he's going to produce phenomenally in the model. If a team comes out and says he's a wide receiver, that's it. I think I'm taking him first overall, and even in superflex leagues. If we're getting, we're going to try and play him both ways. We're going to start him at corner, and he'll kind of play some wide receiver. I think he's undraftable. Like, I think I'm not touching him till the second round, and I think at that point most people will have taken him. Like, he's the biggest headache. He's the most challenging prospect I think I've ever had to evaluate and rank. So yeah, I'm just praying that we get true wide receiver Travis Hunter.
Dude, what a crazy, like, dichotomy, the range of outcomes, right? Of like, he's either my 101 or I'm not touching him. You know what I mean? And like, I completely understand where you're coming from. I am more on the side of, like, I'd be happy to be wrong at the right price, right? Like, to be honest, like, if he's at the 106 and I do have the 6th pick in one of my leagues, and I might take a shot if it's a little ambiguous. If they're like, oh, we're still trying to figure out what he is. Like, he's the type of guy I'm willing to take that bet on and get burned because of what I said, like, just that potential to be a Hall of Fame player. So glad to be wrong on him. But Yeah, what a fun guy. His ADP has been all over the place in our rookie origins draft. He's gone everywhere from like, I think he went in the top 5 in a draft I was in earlier today, but his ADP is around like 13. He was going in the top 3 earlier in the offseason before the combine listed him as a cornerback. So it's just like, he's one of the more fun guys from the fantasy, like, incoming rookie class that we've ever had to analyze. So thanks for diving in with me on him there. I don't have a picture of it, but let's just take a few minutes, close out the show, talk through your tight end model. On my show sheet, I kind of just assumed, I said, Warren, tight end 1. Talk to me about, just give me your top 3, because you shared that with me before the show, and I think it's worth mentioning to the viewers.
Yeah, so yeah, Warren's not 1 for me, and he's certainly not 2 either. So
Let's
yeah,
go.
I've got Colston Loveland's in a tier of his own, tight end 1, and then yeah, Fannin is a tight end 2, and then Warren is very, very close to Fannin as a tight end 3, and that's with Fannin getting mid-3rd round draft capital and Warren as a projected top 10 pick. So.
Wow, yeah, because to your point, well, you don't really have athleticism. Do you kind of just like assume the athleticism with Loveland and Warren in your model, because you mentioned tight ends are important with athleticism? Like, we know they've got it, but we don't have the hard numbers.
Yeah, so if I don't have the hard numbers, I just opt out of that section.
Okay.
In terms of how it weights, it doesn't affect anything massively if it's in or not. It's basically a tick box of, are they athletic or are they really unathletic, and it kind of is a grading scale based on that. So if they're really athletic, it boosts them. If they're really unathletic, it knocks them. Anything in the middle, it kind of stays where they are as such. So so the guys that we don't get numbers for, and sadly that's becoming more and more of the case with guys not going to the combine and things. So yeah, so it's designed to not ding people that we don't have numbers for.
Yeah, and I mean, at least Loveland had an excuse, right? He was recovering from labrum surgery, measured really well. I don't think anybody expected him to come in as tall or as heavy as he did. He's like close to Tyler Warren in size, taller than Tyler Warren and only a few pounds lighter. And you talked a lot about age-adjusted production, something I'm very mindful of as well. And I think, yeah, people will say, like, we've seen some outliers the past few years of guys who kind of break out in their 4th or 5th year or don't do anything till they're a junior and then early declare. But like, that's a bit of a red flag with Warren, right? Like, basically been a nobody until this last year, then has amazing stats, but you've got to ding him because he's friggin' like 27 at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, to give you perspective, age 20 season, okay, total yards, Tyler Warren had like 180 total yards. Harold Fannin had 1,620.
Yeah.
Like, when they were both 20, you're drafting Harold Fannin 4 years younger than Tyler Warren. Like, you're hoping that Harold Fannin in 4 years' time can be the prospect that Tyler Warren is coming out of the draft. Like, yeah, I get it around Tyler Warren. I see the potential talent. He had this phenomenal year this year, but I'm like, if this guy was as amazing as we think he is potentially going to be, surely he should have shown something in those first 3 years in college. And people come back at me and say, oh, but he was playing behind Theo Johnson and stuff like that. It's like, Theo Johnson's like a replacement level tight end. Like, I quite like Theo Johnson. I'm quite hopeful that he turns into something this year. But if we're giving the excuse of, oh, but they had Theo Johnson as the reason he didn't produce,
come on, man.
like, exactly. So yeah, I like Tyler Warren. Like, you know, it's not that I'm really low on him. He's an 86th percentile prospect. Like, I still like him.
Yeah.
But I just, like, Harold Fannin is literally 100th percentile for a lot of the age-adjusted production I look at. Like, it is wild, some of the numbers that he put up in college. And it's like, yes, it's Bowling Green and he's playing against those insurance salesmen and stuff like that that aren't going to get into the NFL. But the numbers are just obscene. So I'm really excited about what he could be. And at cost, there is absolutely no chance I'm drafting Tyler Warren in any leagues this year.
Yeah, he's kind of a full fade for me too, unfortunately. Like, to your point, I see it, but I hate when people are like, the comp is Gronk. And it's like, I don't really feel comfortable comping someone to Gronk, like let me see. It's not as easily translatable, brute force and beating up on people. Like, he was doing that against kids, right? And now you got to go do it against grown men. And so I think that age adjusted production really kind of alludes to that as well. So, well, I would be remiss if we don't spend a minute on your tight end one to close it out. You want to look at that top of the screen there. You will see this is Johnny's guy. Marked him on the site. I put my flag down. Again, when you talk about yards per team pass attempt, 99th percentile college nominator rating, accounting for almost 50% of Michigan's offense. Like, this is unreal. 87th percentile breakout age. Again, the thing that's going to throw people off a bit, never over 700 receiving yards, right? Never over 5 touchdowns. But I go back to, and it's not my comp for him, even though it was Lance Zierlein comped him to Sam Laporta. I'm like, I don't see that at all, really. But before I even saw that comp, I thought to myself, that is the same scenario. You've got a guy who went to Iowa. They didn't pass the ball much, but Laporta just jumped off the screen when you look at per team pass attempt, per route run, per passing attempt stats. He was their whole offense. He was the guy. And that's the same thing with Loveland all over again, except Loveland's got more size. I think he pops a little bit more off the screen athletically to me than Laporta did. I was super high on Laporta coming out. But to your point, I was drafting him in like the end of the second, middle of the third, because I knew nobody was going to dig into the team passing attempt numbers. They were going to go with, who was it? Dalton Kincaid was the flavor of that year, right? And so close me out with this, Rich. Where you mentioned he's your tight end one, like maybe if you don't mind sharing, how high is the percentile score and kind of who's he up with historically in your model?
Yeah, so he's a 91st percentile prospect. So other guys in there. So I mean, Brock Bowers was 99th percentile, like shockingly. Okay. He comps very similarly in the model to Trey McBride.
Wow,
which is
that's not bad.
Good stuff. He is very similar, slightly less positive to Michael Mayer. I still believe. I'm still hopeful that Michael Mayer. I think he's going to get traded. So let's be hopeful.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some pretty good guys. Historically, very similar to TJ Hawkinson in kind of model percentage. So yeah, there's Dallas Goedert throw in there as well. Like historically, it's pretty good, pretty comfortable range to be in and around where he is.
Damn near bust proof based on what I'm hearing. I think the Michael Mayer situation is a little, to your point, ambiguous. It's only been 2 years in the league. We don't want to give up on him yet. Tight ends do break out a little later sometimes, but besides that, very good company at the top of that model. And always love linking up with a Colston Loveland tight end one guy. Thank you, Rich. This was I really enjoyed our conversation, and more than just me getting kicks out of it, I think this will be very valuable for fantasy listeners to kind of maybe think about how they're evaluating this rookie class, maybe adjust the ranks a little bit on their end, maybe lean into some of your draft guide when it comes out later this year. So any closing thoughts on this draft class?
No, I think it's really fascinating. Like, it's very rare that we get, the depth at running back and tight end and the real challenges at wide receiver and quarterbacks. I think it's a case of you've really got to deep dive. You've really got to look in and find the value, because I always say quarterbacks create depth in rookie classes, because, last year you've got 6 first rounders, things like that. It creates depth because it pushes those other guys down. This year doesn't have that. So I think you need to go digging for that kind of gem and those guys you're going to be able to get in the second round that can potentially win your leagues.
Well, Rich, thank you again. Great guest. Would love to have you back on maybe after the draft or something like that. And to the viewers, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you on the next show.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.